banks by themselves need 360 billion euros. They've got bad loans of that amount. They were looking for the British to essentially bail them out of that, and they're very upset that they don't have that money. I actually heard somebody in the immediate aftermath of Brexit talking about how this is bad. We haven't talked about this, but we really need British money. We didn't mention it as the run-up to the referendum because we didn't want to scare the people in Britain. We didn't want them to vote against this. But that's the reality. And at the same time, this Deutsche Bank economist says, well, I don't expect to see a second financial crisis like 2008. But we have another article that we had yesterday on Infowars.com from David Stockman. Remember him from the Reagan administration? He said, here we go again. He said the conditions are even worse now. Hang on, we'll be right back. We're going to have some information about Hillary. We're going to have Alex Jones joining us in the next segment. He's going to talk about who he thinks Donald Trump is going to pick as his vice president. Of course, the time is getting very close. We're not even a week away from the Republican convention, if I've got my dates right. I think it begins next Monday. We've also got an update in terms of the rebellion, and it's a small rebellion, but it is a vocal rebellion of people inside the Republican establishment saying that they are not going to follow the votes as cast by the voters. They say that their conscience, their free speech, trumps that of the voters in the primaries. That was dealt a major blow today. I'm going to tell you about that in just a moment. Before we do, I want to let you know that we've extended our sale that we had for the 4th of July, mega sale that we had for the 4th of July week. We have now extended that for a couple of the items that were on there. We now have still 20% off Survival Shield X2. It's selling out very quickly, but also 20 to 40% off InfoWars Select Storable Food. We have extended those two until tonight, and then they're going to disappear along with the other sale items that we had beginning on the 4th of July weekend. Now is the time to step up and to take advantage of these sales. These are excellent sales, 20 to 40% off InfoWars Select Storable Food. That's something that's going to last you 25 years. Excellent packaging, all made in the USA, GMO-free. That's something that is a real important thing to have in your storage spots to take care of any kind of unrest that we may have, and we're seeing that in spades right now. Again, you can find out about those specials at InfoWarsStore.com. That's 20% off Survival Shield X2 and 20 to 40% off InfoWars Select Storable Food. Now, what happened today with the Never Trump movement? You remember we've had this lady, Kendall Unruh, who is a Utah delegate. She has a small organization called Free the Delegates. We also have Curly Hoagland, who is the guy who said, hey, we get to do whatever we want to. It's our party. And I remember when he was interviewed on CNN, and they said, well, why do we even have primaries then? And he said, good question. I don't think they matter. And then we had this guy in Virginia. His name is Beau Corral. He's a lawyer. He filed a class action lawsuit in Virginia challenging a state law that binds delegates to support the winner of the election. He said that's a violation of his First Amendment rights. Well, what about our First Amendment rights? Do we have rights? I mean, these people have the attitude of the super delegate mentality that we're seeing in the Democrat Party. And it's interesting as we look at the collapse of Bernie Sanders, the fact that he is totally sold out, and we've got an article up on Infowars.com, Dump the Burn. Dems revolt after Bernie endorses Hillary. We've got a lot of people on social media that are tweeting out their disillusion with this whole process. Look, folks, he totally sold out. When we talk about where he was on these issues, he did get Hillary to jump in on the bandwagon of free college for everybody in the world, because anyone in the world can come here with our open borders. And if they come here with their open borders, then they're entitled to a free education. Or at the very least, right now, they get in-state tuition, which American citizens whose parents have lived here all their life, who have paid taxes all their lives, they don't get that same kind of consideration for in-state tuition. But if you come here as an illegal immigrant, you can go to any state you want to and get in-state tuition. But they want to make that free for everybody. And understand that when we look at, I guess, take a look at your tax bills. You'll probably find, especially you'll be aware of this if you own a house. If you are renting, you may not see it because it's buried in your rent costs. But the largest taxes that most of us pay are property taxes. And you pay those property taxes even if you rent. They're embedded in your rent. You just don't see it. So people aren't aware of it. What is the major expense on your property taxes? It's the schools. And the schools are exploding. And of course, we have to have tutors to teach people in whatever language they demand coming into this country. And so let's expand this. Let's give everybody free college tuition. It isn't going to make anything cheaper. You know, when you subsidize things, they get quite a bit more expensive. So college costs are going to soar out of control, but that's okay. We're going to educate the world, and all it's going to cost you is everything you own. It's going to cost you the ability to own a home because you're not going to be able to afford the taxes. So Bernie got Hillary to move along with him on that. But what he didn't get her to move along with was the opposition to these trans-Pacific and transatlantic partnerships, these so-called partnerships. They're actually trade treaties, okay? She's not going to give up on that. You got to understand, that's where the big money is. They want to have these deals. They were created by corporations in secret. They want to push these controls, and understand, it is not free trade. It is management of your economy by a committee that you have no influence or control over. It's what the British people just said we've had enough of. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
As Donald Trump picked his VP running mate, more and more the rumblings are that it's former General Michael T. Flynn. Michael T. Flynn has been a registered Democrat for most of his life. He seems to be pretty moderate on a lot of his policies. Is that smart for Donald Trump to do when, if Donald Trump gets assassinated, then we would be basically under the control of someone who leans more Democrat than he does Republican? I'm not trying to shoot down General Flynn. In fact, I've been a big supporter and fan of what he's done in his career, and I've followed a lot of his work. But I want to throw out one of the cons, one of the problems before we look at the good points. Now, let's go back to about a month ago. At that time, Senator Jeff Sessions of Alabama, who I think is a great guy, was at the top of the list. The problem is they're already pushing this racist narrative against Trump where he puts a star on one of his advertisements and they say it's anti-Semitic. I mean, it's getting crazy. And so they can obviously dig back into Republican politics in the 60s and 70s and the young Republicans that Senator Sessions was part of and try to claim some racism angle. I personally say double down, and who cares what the political correct are going to do? They're always lying anyways. Should he go for some Republican governor, woman, or senator? Yeah, if they're a constitutionalist, they've got what it takes, they've got a good record, I'm all for having a woman VP. But it shouldn't just be a gimmick because it's a woman. They're talking about Hillary doing Elizabeth Warren for an all-woman ticket just because they're women. Again, that's a gimmick. I'm sick of it. But getting back to why I like Michael T. Flynn, he really reformed a lot of the work in special forces. He called for overseas spying, not domestic spying. He called for agency sharing information. He tried to really stick up for people in the military, but he also had more courage than anybody I've ever seen in modern times in the military. And then he came out last year on Al Jazeera and other platforms, and he said, look, Obama basically ordered us to help al-Qaeda, to help ISIS, and that's who we've been fighting on the side of for years. And the reporter said, oh, my God, so they didn't know. And he says, no, they knew and ordered that. He talked about the elephant in the room.
In 2012, your agency was saying, quote, the Salafists, the Muslim Brotherhood, and al-Qaeda in Iraq are the major forces driving the insurgency in Syria. Mm-hmm. In 2012, the US was helping coordinate arms transfers to those same groups. Why did you not stop that if you're worried about the rise of quote-unquote Islamic extremism?
I mean, I hate to say it's not my job, but my job was to ensure that the accuracy of our intelligence that was being presented was as good as it could be. And I will tell you, it goes before 2012. I mean, when we were in Iraq, and we still had decisions to be made before there was a decision to pull out of Iraq in 2011. I mean, it was very clear what we were going to face.
Well, just to clarify once more, you are basically saying that even in government at the time, you knew those groups were around, you saw this analysis,
sure,
and you were arguing against it. But who wasn't listening?
I think the administration.
So the administration turned a blind eye to your analysis?
I don't know if they turned a blind eye. I think it was a decision. I think it was a willful decision.
A willful decision to go support an insurgency that had Salafists, al-Qaeda, and Muslim Brotherhood?
A willful decision to do what they're doing. which you'd have to really ask the president, what is it that he actually is doing with the policy that is in place, because it is very, very confusing. I'm sitting here today, Mehdi, and I can't tell you exactly what that is, and I've been at this for a long time.
What Seymour Hersh has written about, what we broke, what Colonel Schaefer has talked about, what Steve Pachenik has talked about. He was the head of Defense Intelligence in the middle of all this, and here he is exposing it on international television. That shows courage. And if he'll expose the nexus point between criminal elements in our government, bipartisan, John McCain, Obama, Hillary, arming radical jihadists to take over Libya, parts of Syria, Iraq, you name it, and show that they're working with Saudi Arabia to betray this nation in Europe, he gets my support right there, because he's also talking about the plan for a European caliphate. He's talking about the plans to flood us with migrants for destabilization. He basically got in trouble from Obama and taken out in 2014, despite the fact he was an innovator, despite the fact he was a Democrat, because he kept saying radical Islam, radical Islam. Well, Orthodox Islam is radical Islam. He's not even going further enough saying that, but he got removed for saying radical Islam when it is Islam that is engaged in hundreds and hundreds of terror attacks. And it's Sunni-based, funded by Saudi Arabia. So the word is, right now he's at the top of the list, and Trump could announce by Friday they're planning. The current word is, Trump changes his mind, obviously, he's an innovative thinker himself, that by Friday or Saturday they're going to be announcing the VP, and that right now Michael T. Flynn is right up there at the top. So is Jeff Sessions, but not at the very top anymore. He's still in the top 3 names. Michael T. Flynn. Don't forget what he said on Al Jazeera. Don't forget the article is also linked on Infowars.com, because if we can show that our own government is financing Black Lives Matter and ISIS and Al-Qaeda to destabilize the world and bring in more control, we can really reverse a lot of the activities that the social engineers are involved with. I'm Alex Jones. Now back to Infowars Nightly News.
And here in the studio, I'm David Knight. And as Alex was just talking about the upcoming convention, it's important to remember some of these other names that are coming up there. Of course, we have Newt Gingrich. We have Governor Pence. And it's interesting that both of these guys, I believe if Trump were to pick them, it would be a repudiation of the reasons, in my opinion, to vote for Trump. And that is, he's standing for closing the open borders. He's standing against these globalist trade deals that are going to destroy our sovereignty. That's something that Senator Sessions has been very consistent, very strong on, but it's something that Pence and Newt Gingrich have not. Now, Pence has opposed the open borders. Newt Gingrich hasn't, but both of them have been big so-called free trade guys. Free trade in the sense of NAFTA or CAFTA, the Central American Free Trade Agreement, which Pence supported. Pence also has publicly supported the Trans-Pacific Partnership, as has Newt Gingrich. But then when Newt Gingrich started sniffing around the vice presidency, he changed his position on that issue. So I think that it would be a major betrayal of the principles that Donald Trump has espoused to pick either of those. I still hope that it is Senator Sessions. He is a man of unimpeachable integrity. He has always stood for the Constitution. I'll never forget his questioning of Leon Panetta, who at the time was defense secretary. He's been defense secretary and CIA secretary, questioning him on the conditions under which our government would go to war, as the Obama administration saw. Would you seek Congress's vote? And of course, Panetta said, well, we'd let you know what we decide, but we would talk to the UN and we'd talk to NATO and make our decision and let you know. And Senator Sessions was like, I can't believe what I'm hearing. You were a congressman. You swore an oath to the Constitution. What's the matter with you? So he's a person of integrity. He's the only senator who read these sovereignty-destroying trade agreements, the Trans-Pacific, the Transatlantic partnerships, and he lectured Congress on it before they voted with the Trade Promotion Authority to ignore the constitutional process of ratifying treaties. Just as they don't care what the process is for going to war, they don't care what the process is for ratifying a treaty. A treaty is ratified under the Constitution with 2/3 of the Senate voting for it. It says nothing about the House of Representatives. What these people did was they said, well, we're just going to go with a simple majority. But don't worry, we'll throw in the House of Representatives as well. That's not the constitutional process.